Is growing old together always a blessing? Have you ever sat back in your favorite chair, a warm cup of coffee in hand, and wondered, is this really what my golden years were supposed to feel like? Maybe you've spent a lifetime in partnership, giving your time, energy, and patience to someone you love. Or maybe you're entering this season of life alone, hearing people say you should find someone before it's too late. But here's a question worth asking. Does having a partner in later life always make things better? We grow up believing that companionship is the key to happiness, especially as we age, that no one wants to grow old alone. Yet for many, the reality of being in a relationship after 60 is far more complicated. What once felt like love can quietly become obligation. What used to bring joy may now bring stress, limitation, and emotional fatigue. This isn't about being anti-love or anti-relationship. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about recognizing that after decades of working, raising children, and meeting everyone else's needs, you have earned the right to prioritize peace, independence, and your own well-being. In this video, we're going to explore 5 reasons why having a partner in your later years might not be the gift society makes it out to be. Not to discourage love, but to help you see the full picture. Because the truth is, aging should be about freedom, not sacrifice. Stay with me. You might just discover that the life you truly want doesn't have to include compromise. 1. The emotional burden of constant compromise. As we get older, our tolerance for unnecessary stress naturally declines. The little things that used to feel manageable, those everyday adjustments, the subtle give and take of living with another person, start to feel heavier with time, and what many people overlook is just how emotionally taxing constant compromise can become in your later years. When you were younger, it might have felt natural, even expected, to bend a little for the sake of harmony. Maybe you let your spouse choose where to vacation, what TV shows to watch, or how to organize your home. Back then, compromise felt like love in action. It was part of building a life together. But as the years pass, those same decisions begin to feel less like choices and more like obligations. Suddenly, something as simple as deciding what to eat for dinner becomes a negotiation. You find yourself justifying your preferences, minimizing your needs, and, more often than not, giving in to keep the peace. Take Robert, for example, a 74-year-old retired teacher who spent over 40 years in marriage. He loved his wife deeply, but as time went on, he realized he was constantly adjusting to her desires. From the temperature in the house to the way the furniture was arranged, almost everything became a shared decision. And while that may sound fair in theory, in practice, Robert felt like he had slowly disappeared. Now all he wants is a quiet morning with his newspaper and coffee. But his wife insists on turning on the television the moment she wakes up. It's a small thing, but when those small things happen every day, they build up into emotional fatigue. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing that after a lifetime of putting others first, you've earned the right to stop negotiating every detail of your day. In fact, one of the greatest gifts of aging should be peace of mind, the freedom to live life on your own terms, without constant resistance or debate. Unfortunately, many older adults remain in relationships not out of joy, but out of habit, fear of being alone, or societal expectations. They find themselves trapped in emotional routines, soothing feelings, adjusting schedules, biting their tongues, not because they want to, but because it's what they've always done. And here's the hard truth. If a relationship is consistently draining your emotional energy at this stage in life, it may no longer be serving your best interests. Love shouldn't feel like a never-ending compromise. It should feel like ease, like support, like freedom to be exactly who you are without apology. So if you found yourself feeling worn down, not by age, but by the weight of always having to accommodate someone else, it might be time to reflect. Because peace at this point in life isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. 2. The loss of true independence. One of the greatest and most underappreciated gifts of growing older is the opportunity to live life entirely on your own terms. After decades of working, raising families, managing responsibilities, and meeting the needs of others. Many older adults look forward to finally reclaiming their time, space, and decisions. But when you're in a relationship, even a loving one, true independence can quietly slip away. Independence isn't just about living alone. It's about waking up and deciding what you want to do without having to run it by someone else. It's about choosing how to spend your day, where to go, what to eat, and how to live without filtering those choices through another person's lens. For many, that kind of autonomy has been missing for decades. Take Frank, a 78-year-old Navy veteran who spent over 50 years married to the same woman. When his wife passed away, grief hit him hard, but something else emerged, something unexpected. Silence, stillness, space. At first it felt foreign, but slowly Frank realized he was experiencing something he hadn't felt since his 20s: freedom. For the first time in decades, Frank didn't need to explain why he was going to bed early, or justify why he wanted to eat soup 3 nights in a row. He didn't have to negotiate weekend plans, compromise over home decor, or share the television remote. That newfound freedom wasn't rooted in selfishness. It was a quiet celebration of his own preferences, his own voice. Even in the healthiest relationships, there's a natural blending of routines, habits, and decision-making. You become part of a team, and that teamwork often means compromise. But the longer the relationship lasts, the more you may begin to forget what you actually want, outside of what works for the partnership. And let's not overlook mental independence, something many don't realize they've given up. Over time, opinions start to mesh. You begin to second-guess yourself, or you internalize your partner's judgments. Without even knowing it, your inner voice becomes quieter, replaced by years of shared thinking. That's not necessarily a bad thing, unless it means you've lost sight of who you really are. In later life, when time feels more precious than ever, regaining your independence can be deeply fulfilling. It allows you to reconnect with forgotten passions, explore interests without permission, and prioritize your needs without guilt. Many older adults fear loneliness, but what they don't always recognize is the freedom that can come with solitude. You're not required to explain your schedule, manage someone else's expectations, or compromise your peace of mind. So if you feel like your independence has quietly been replaced by routine, obligation, or emotional codependency, it might be time to reflect. Because the truth is, independence isn't selfish, it's sacred. And in this chapter of life, you deserve to live without apology, fully grounded in your own choices, your own rhythm, and your own joy. 3. The emotional exhaustion of always adjusting. At first, being in a relationship feels like a beautiful rhythm. Two people learning to coexist, support each other, and build a life together. You compromise on meals, share the remote, adjust your schedule, and even change little parts of your personality to make things work. And for a while, it feels like love. It feels worth it. But as you age, that constant adjustment becomes something else entirely. It starts to wear you down, not physically, but emotionally. And that kind of exhaustion isn't always loud or obvious. It creeps in slowly, like background noise you've grown used to, until the silence returns and you finally realize how loud it was all along. Robert, now 74, spent over 4 decades in marriage. He loved his wife. They raised a family, built a home, and shared thousands of small moments. But looking back, he could count very few days when the choices were completely his. What movie to watch, where to go for dinner, even how to organize the kitchen, it always involved negotiation. It wasn't that she was demanding. It was just the nature of the relationship. Two people constantly navigating around each other's preferences. And after years of this, Robert felt something he didn't expect when his wife passed. Not just grief, but relief. He was surprised by how liberating it felt to wake up and choose for himself. For once, without second-guessing, without explaining, without adjusting. He hadn't realized how emotionally tired he was from all those little compromises that added up over a lifetime. This is the reality many older adults experience but rarely speak about. Always adjusting doesn't just cost you energy, it chips away at your identity. You might catch yourself thinking, Do I even know what I really like anymore? You become so used to smoothing over conflict, avoiding disagreements, and prioritizing peace that you lose touch with your own preferences. And while peace is a worthy goal, it shouldn't come at the cost of your emotional health. In your younger years, compromise builds character. It teaches patience, empathy, and teamwork. But in your later years, it can become a quiet burden, one that prevents you from fully enjoying the freedom you've earned. Even minor decisions, how to decorate your living space, what time to go to bed, or whether to see a doctor, can turn into exhausting negotiations. Over time, that constant push and pull dulls your joy and drains your spirit. That's why solitude for many becomes a form of healing. It's not about rejecting love. It's about finally having the emotional space to breathe, to listen to your inner voice, and to live without compromise. So if you find yourself feeling tired, not from activity but from always bending, it might be time to ask, what would life feel like if I stopped adjusting and simply allowed myself to be? You might just rediscover a kind of peace that's been missing for far too long. The burden of caretaking. When a partner falls ill. When we think about growing old with someone, we often picture companionship, holding hands during walks, sharing meals, comforting each other through the aches of aging. But what most people don't talk about is the heavy, often overwhelming burden of caretaking when one partner's health begins to decline. And for many, it comes faster and harder than expected. At 77, James thought he was prepared for anything. He had been married to his wife, Carol, for over 50 years. They'd raised 3 children, survived job losses, and even beat cancer once. But when Carol's mobility started to decline, James stepped into a role he hadn't fully anticipated, that of a full-time caregiver. At first, it was small, driving her to appointments, helping her in and out of the car, reminding her to take medications. But within a year, it became much more. He was helping her bathe, cooking every meal, managing all the household chores, and barely sleeping through the night due to her medical needs. His own health, once sturdy and dependable, began to suffer. He lost weight. He felt anxious all the time. And worst of all, he felt alone. What started as an act of love turned into an unrelenting responsibility. And that's the part no one prepares you for. Caregiving in your later years can be both physically draining and emotionally isolating. You stop having time for your own needs. You put off your doctor's appointments. You withdraw from friends and community because you're just too tired or too stressed. All of your energy goes toward keeping your partner comfortable, even while your own body and mind begin to wear down. And here's the truth many caregivers don't say out loud. Sometimes they feel trapped. It's not that they don't love their partner, it's that the sheer weight of caretaking becomes too much. Especially when you're older and your body isn't as strong, your sleep isn't as deep, and your energy isn't as reliable as it once was. According to the Family Caregiver Alliance, older spousal caregivers are at a significantly higher risk for depression, burnout, and even early death. That's because the stress of long-term caregiving can affect every part of your health, from blood pressure to immune function to cognitive clarity. And when the caregiving ends, often due to the passing of a spouse, many find themselves physically and emotionally depleted, sometimes with lasting health consequences. This is not about abandoning those we love. It's about acknowledging the reality that sometimes staying in a partnership means taking on a level of responsibility that becomes deeply harmful to your own well-being. That's why many seniors who live independently find a surprising sense of relief. They focus on their health, their time, their energy. They maintain routines that support their well-being without being stretched thin. Love is a beautiful thing, but in your later years, so is self-preservation. And sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. 5. The financial and emotional strain of late-life partnerships. Many people believe that having a partner in later life brings emotional support, financial stability, and companionship. And in some cases, that's true. But for others, entering or maintaining a relationship in your 60s, 70s, or beyond can come with unexpected burdens, especially when it comes to money and emotional well-being. Let's talk about finances first. By the time you reach retirement age, You've likely spent decades working hard, saving carefully, and planning for a future where you can finally relax. Maybe you have a pension, social security benefits, or a nest egg set aside. You know how far your budget can stretch, and you've built a routine around it. But when you bring a partner into the picture, everything changes. Take Robert, for example. At 80, he was comfortably retired and living within his means. But when he entered a new relationship with a woman who had her own financial struggles, adult children needing help, mounting medical bills, and no significant retirement savings, he found himself dipping into funds he never intended to touch. Shared expenses, unexpected caregiving costs, even disagreements over how to spend money began to take a toll. What started as a sweet companionship quietly became a financial liability. And he's not alone. Many older adults find themselves shouldering more than their fair share of the cost, either out of generosity, guilt, or pressure to keep the peace. Late-life partnerships often come with uneven financial footing. One partner may be more secure than the other, and that imbalance can lead to tension, resentment, or even silent sacrifice. And unlike in younger relationships, there's less time and flexibility to recover financially when things go wrong. But it's not just about the money. There's also a very real emotional cost. Financial disagreements are one of the leading sources of stress in any relationship. And when you're older, that stress can feel heavier. Arguing about spending habits, splitting bills, or dealing with inheritance concerns can create friction that overshadows the companionship you hope for. Some seniors even find themselves trapped in toxic relationships they no longer want, afraid to leave because of shared finances, legal entanglements, or fear of starting over alone. That sense of being stuck only adds to emotional strain. On the flip side, those who choose to remain single often report a greater sense of control over their money and their peace of mind. They spend how they want, save according to their own priorities, and make decisions without consulting or compromising. They also avoid the silent emotional tax that can come from walking on eggshells about money, an issue that only becomes more sensitive with age. The truth is, late-life relationships aren't always about love and laughter. Sometimes they're about navigating unspoken expectations, shared burdens, and deep stress. And if you're not careful, the emotional and financial weight of maintaining the partnership can outweigh the joy it brings. So before stepping into or continuing a relationship in your later years, ask yourself honestly, is this adding peace to my life or subtracting from it? As we enter our later years, every moment becomes more precious. And with that comes a deeper desire for peace, simplicity, and authenticity. Yet many older adults remain in or seek out relationships not because they bring joy, but because society has long told us we're supposed to. But here's the truth. You don't owe anyone your energy. Not anymore. You've spent a lifetime working hard, raising families, keeping promises, and making sacrifices. Now is your time to live on your own terms, with your own rhythms, your own choices, and your own kind of quiet happiness. If a relationship enhances that peace, that's beautiful. But if it drains your spirit, complicates your life, or forces you to keep bending, then it may no longer serve your well-being. There's no shame in choosing independence over partnership. In fact, there's great wisdom in it. Being alone doesn't mean being lonely. It can mean freedom, it can mean clarity, and it can mean finally giving yourself the space to breathe without guilt or compromise. So whether you're in a relationship now, considering one, or reflecting on the life you've built, ask yourself, does this bring me peace? Does this honor who I've become? Because your later years shouldn't be about enduring. They should be about enjoying. Choose what's best for you, and never forget you've earned it.